Mark loved Tuesdays. Tuesdays were chest day. It was a day he looked forward to all week. The anticipation of pushing his limits, feeling the burn in his muscles, and the satisfaction of completing his routine gave him a sense of purpose. It was more than just a workout, it was a ritual that grounded him. He arrived at Peak Performance Gym at 6 p.m. Always 6 p.m. The consistency of his schedule was something he cherished. It was a small but significant part of his life that he could control. No matter how chaotic his day had been, he knew that at 6 p.m., he would be at the gym, ready to focus on himself. The smell of sweat and iron greeted him. It was a familiar scent, one that signaled the start of his transformation. Each piece of equipment held the promise of progress, of becoming stronger and more resilient. The gym was a place where he could leave behind the stress of the day and focus solely on his physical and mental well-being. He waved at Brenda at the front desk. She was always there, a constant in his routine. Her presence was comforting, a reminder that he was part of a community, even if he didn't always interact with others. The simple act of acknowledging each other added a layer of familiarity to his visits. She offered her usual tired smile. Mark nodded back. It was a small exchange, but it meant a lot. It was a moment of human connection in a world that often felt disconnected. These brief interactions were part of what made the gym feel like a second home. He scanned his key fob. The turnstile clicked. He was in. The sound was a signal that he had crossed the threshold into his sanctuary. The gym was a place where he could be himself, where he could push his limits and find out what he was truly capable of. The gym was his sanctuary, a place where the world outside faded away. Here, he was free from the demands of work, the pressures of daily life, and the constant noise of the outside world. It was a place where he could focus on his goals and work towards becoming the best version of himself. A place where the world outside faded. Bills, work, worries, they all dissolved here. In their place was the sound of weights clanging, the rhythmic whir of treadmills and the grunts of effort. It was a symphony of progress, a soundtrack to his journey of self-improvement, replaced by the clang of weights. Each lift, each rep, was a step towards his goals. The physical exertion was a form of therapy, a way to release the tension that had built up throughout the day. The weights were his allies, helping him to build strength and resilience. The rhythmic whir of treadmills, the grunts of effort, these sounds were a reminder that he was not alone in his journey. Others were there, pushing themselves, striving for their own goals. It was a collective effort, a shared experience that added to the sense of community. Mark found solace in the repetition. The predictability of his routine was a source of comfort. Each set, each rep, was a step towards his goals. The physical exertion was a form of therapy, a way to release the tension that had built up throughout the day. The weights were his allies, helping him to build strength and resilience. He headed for his usual locker, number 47. It was a small detail, but it was part of his routine. The locker was a place to store his belongings, but it was also a symbol of his commitment to his fitness journey. Each time he opened it, he was reminded of how far he had come and how much further he could go. As Mark approached the free weights, he noticed something unusual. He saw them. A new family. They were standing in the corner, almost blending into the shadows. He'd never seen them before. Not in all his years at Peak Performance. The gym was usually a place of familiarity, a second home to many. But today it felt different. A father, a mother, and 2 children. They stood out. Not because they were loud or disruptive, but because they were different. Their clothes were strange, not gym clothes, dark, almost formal, like they'd wandered in from a funeral. The father was tall and gaunt, his eyes seemed too large for his face. They scanned the room slowly, methodically. The mother was small, pale. She held a handbag clutched tightly to her chest. Her lips were pressed into a thin line. The children, a boy and a girl, stood silently by their parents' side. The boy, perhaps 10 years old, had a solemn expression, his eyes mirroring his father's intensity. The girl, slightly younger, clutched a small doll, her fingers gripping it tightly as if it were a lifeline. Mark couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Who were they? Why were they here? The gym was a place for sweat and effort, not for silent, eerie families dressed in mourning attire. He watched as they moved together, almost in unison, their steps slow and deliberate. It was as if they were from another time, another place. Mark felt a chill run down his spine. He knew he had to find out more about these newcomers, but for now, he could only watch and wonder. Mark started his first set on the bench press. The weight felt good, familiar. But his focus was fractured. He kept glancing towards the new family. They had moved, slightly. The father was now standing near a leg press machine, not using it, just standing beside it. His hands were clasped behind his back. He rocked back and forth, gently, almost imperceptibly. His gaze was still distant, unfocused. The mother and the two children had taken a seat. On a bench typically used for dumbbell exercises, they sat in a perfect row, mother in the middle, boy on her right. Mark moved on to incline presses. He tried to ignore them, he really did. He put on his headphones, turned up his music, but he could still feel their eyes, or imagined he could. The gym's usual sounds seemed muted, subdued, as if the very air was holding its breath. He risked another glance. The father was now whispering to the mother, or it looked like whispering. His lips moved, but no sound reached Mark. Then, between songs, he heard it, a faint murmur, from their direction. It wasn't English or any language he recognized, it was soft, sibilant. Mark was midway through a dumbbell fly, his muscles burned, his breath came in gasps. He was trying to lose himself in the effort to push the unsettling family from his mind. He focused on the ceiling tiles, counting them. 1, 2, 3. The hum of the fluorescent lights above him was steady, reliable. Then it happened, without warning, without even a flicker. The lights went out, all of them. Darkness, absolute, utter. The music cut off mid-lyric. The whir of treadmills died. The fans stopped spinning. Silence descended. Mark's first thought, once the emergency lights provided their weak illumination, was of the family. He had seen them just moments before, a mother and her two children, sitting on the bench, chatting and laughing. The father had been standing by the water fountain, filling up a bottle. It was a scene of normalcy, a snapshot of everyday life, but now, in the eerie glow of the emergency lights, that scene had been wiped away, as if it had never existed. He looked towards the bench where the mother and children had been sitting, empty. The bench, which had been a hub of activity, was now just a cold, lifeless piece of furniture. No signs of the family remained, no toys, no bags, nothing to indicate that anyone had been there at all. He scanned the area where the father had stood by the water fountain. Empty. The water fountain, which had been gurgling with life, was now silent. The bottle that had been filling up was gone, as if it had never existed. The entire area felt like a ghost town, abandoned and forgotten. He looked towards the leg press. The machine, which had been in use, was now still. The weights were neatly stacked, untouched. It was as if time had stopped, freezing everything in place, but removing the people who had been there. Empty. They were gone. Completely and utterly gone. The gym, once filled with the sounds of life, was now a hollow shell. The silence was deafening, pressing in on him from all sides. It was as if the building itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen, as if they had never been there at all. The thought sent a chill down his spine. How could an entire family just vanish? There were no signs of a struggle, no indication that anything was amiss. It was as if they had been plucked out of existence, leaving no trace behind. In those few seconds of total darkness. He stood up, his mind raced, trying to make sense of what he was seeing, or rather what he wasn't seeing. The darkness had been brief, but it had been enough. Enough for something inexplicable to happen. His legs felt a little shaky. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving him with a sense of unease. He had to find out what had happened. He had to know where they had gone. He walked over to the bench. Each step felt heavy, as if he was wading through water. The bench loomed in front of him, a silent witness to whatever had transpired. He ran his hand along its surface. The cool plastic was smooth under his fingers, but it offered no answers. It was just a bench, devoid of any clues. Cool plastic, nothing else. No indentation, no lingering warmth, no forgotten handbag. It was as if the family had been a figment of his imagination, a dream that had evaporated upon waking. He checked the floor around it, not a scuff mark. The floor was pristine, untouched. It was as if the family had floated away, leaving no trace of their presence. The mystery deepened, and Mark knew he had to get to the bottom of it. The answers were out there, somewhere in the darkness. Mark slowly scanned the gym again. The emergency lights cast a sickly pallor on everything. Faces looked gaunt, shadowed. People were moving, but their movements seemed off, slower, more deliberate, almost mechanical. Old Mrs. Henderson was on a stationary bike, pedaling. Her head was down, but as Mark watched, she lifted it. Her eyes met his. She wasn't smiling. Her face was a mask. Her eyes were wide, too wide, and empty. He looked away quickly. Mark's heart hammered against his ribs. This wasn't right. None of this was right. The vanished family, the strange behavior of the regulars, the oppressive silence. It was like a dream, a nightmare, a very bad one. He had to get out, now. He started walking towards the exit, trying to act casual, normal, as if he'd just finished his workout, as if everything was perfectly fine. But his palms were sweating, his breath was shallow. He passed by a woman on a treadmill. It wasn't moving, of course, but she was still walking, her feet slapping against the stationary belt. Mark stumbled out into the parking lot. The air outside was fresh, alive, so different from the stale, charged atmosphere inside the gym. He took a deep breath, and another. His lungs ached, the parking lot lights were on. Cars sat gleaming under their orange glow. Everything looked normal, mundane, safe. He looked back at the gym, peak performance. The windows were dark, except for the faint, eerie flicker of the emergency lights within. He hurried to his car, fumbling with his keys. His hands were still shaking. He unlocked the door, slid inside, locked it immediately.